If you've ever been intimidated by the Fairlight page in DaVinci Resolve, then this video will help break down the interface, hopefully making it as simple as possible to understand. The goal is to teach you where all the major panels are, what tools you have at your disposal, and give you the confidence to dive deeper into sound design and mixing. This tour of the Fairlight page is designed for people just starting with audio. Perhaps you've done some editing and now want to dive a little bit deeper into audio production. Don't forget to check the link in the description for a free download of some media that you can use to play around in Fairlight. Let's get to it. All right, so here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and let's say you just got your edit done and you're slowly putting some sound effects and music in and whatnot, but you want to take it to that next step and actually really work with those audio elements. So what we're going to do is go down to the Fairlight tab right here and open up Fairlight. Now this should be what you first see when you open up the Fairlight page. This might look a little confusing because you have all of these meters up here. You have no idea what this means. You've got all these fader controls and things and your tracks, and where's your video? I don't see any video. Well, hopefully this video will help clear up how to navigate the Fairlight page so that you can do the things that you want to do with your audio. The first thing I'm going to show is the timeline here. Now this whole section should look exactly like your edit page, just without a video track. But we can actually view the video track if we go up to this button right here. This will open up our view options for the timeline. And our first option is display video tracks. Click on that and it loads up our video tracks we can see right here. Now you'll notice we also have our video player up in the right hand. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but for now, I'm just showing you that we can see our video if we need to, but we don't have to. Since we're in Fairlight, we're going to be working with audio and not video, and hopefully your video won't need to be edited anymore, thus we won't need to worry about it. The first things we're going to look at are our tracks. Now, just as we have in the edit page, we have track headers, and we can select them, and they function in exactly the same way. They just have more options to work with. The one new one you'll notice is the bus track down here. This track is what all of the other tracks feed into and is your final output for audio. You're not going to be doing a whole lot with this track at the moment. In fact, the only thing you generally do with a bus track would be to add, say, a limiter or a compressor just to enhance the final output of the audio. So the first thing I'd like to show is that there are, generally speaking, two types of audio tracks. Although there are more, we are only going to focus on two. We have mono tracks and stereo tracks. Typically speaking, dialogue tracks should be in mono. That means one channel. Stereo tracks are two channel. And you can see there's a little distinct line in between here. You'll also notice that in the mono track, as I zoom in here, the waveform clip is just one piece. Whereas over here on the stereo track, I have this clip and it is split into two pieces. It has two channels. So there are two types of tracks that you are generally going to be working with, mono and stereo. Now you can change what type a track is by going to the track header, right-clicking, and going up to Change Track Type to. And here we see mono, stereo, and then some other options that we're not going to worry about. But that's how you change the track type. You can also, in this menu, change the track color. If you want your dialogue to be orange or your sound effects to be purple, you can do that here as well. So this functions exactly like our regular timeline. We can scrub through, we can make cuts, just like we did in the edit page by using either our hotkeys or using this razor tool up here to make edits. We can move clips around. We can also nudge clips with the period key and comma key to push them one side or the other for more fine tuning if they need to be nudged just a little bit. And we also can zoom by holding Alt and using our scroll wheel to zoom out or in. We can also hold down our scroll wheel and click and drag from left to right. To change the size of our tracks, we can either highlight them and adjust them manually here, Or we can also go up to these tools up here, which will adjust the tracks at the same time to be the same height. So we can make them really small like this, or make them really large like that. We can also use this tool here to zoom in and out on the playhead. Speaking of these tools up here, these are our selection tools. We have the normal arrow selection tool, which does exactly what you think it would. The next one is the range tool. Now, this one is a little interesting in that it doesn't have a huge function other than you can click and drag a selection like this, and that will create an in and out point. You can then loop playback from this range selection, or you can click a clip and that will select that clip as an entire range. You can then see that it turns into the hand icon, and you can then move that clip back and forth. Then you can click outside of that area to deselect. The next tool we have is the focus mode tool, which is similar to the range selector in that when you're in the top section of a clip, you can select a range. And then when you're in the bottom part of a clip, it turns into the hand to move. So they act in a very similar way, but there's a little bit more functionality with the focus mode. The next is the pencil tool, and that essentially lets you draw, say, automation onto your clips. We'll get to that in a minute. So this is the timeline panel. Some of the new options in the tracks that you'll see are we have this number here, which is our fader number. So as I go over to my fader here and I drop it down, you'll see in that corner the number go down, -13, corresponding to our fader. I can double click on the fader to set it back. You can also click and drag within that to adjust the fader level. The other buttons we have at the top here are lock, to lock the track. We can arm for record. We can solo the track, and we can mute the track. Up here, you'll see 1.0 that designates mono or stereo, mono being 1 track, stereo being 2 track. Now by default, the toggle automation will be on. As you can see, that adds some different properties to our track header, namely this drop-down menu, which gives us fader level, mute, auto assistant, pan, EQ, and such. Those are for automation. We can select one of those and add automation to the fader level or the EQ if that's what we want to do. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Another thing I'd like to mention is the grid view up here. This is new. This allows you to display a grid on the timeline, and it also allows you to change from time code to tempo, which makes it look more like a regular DAW as far as music goes. We'll keep it on timecode for now. Another thing I'd like to mention is the timeline selector. In the edit page, it is up here at the top, but for Fairlight, it is over here. We can change our timelines through that menu. The next section I'll talk about is up here. Now, these are your meters. This is a visual representation of all of your tracks and what levels they're registering as they play back. So as I play back our dialogue here, you'll see number 1, track 1, which is my dialogue, is activated. As I get over here, my sound effects are activated, and so on. We can get rid of those by going over here to the meters, which will take them away, and it takes away everything. Interesting. If I bring them back, I get my control room back, I get my viewer back, and so forth. So let's say you don't need your meters, but you do want your video. Up here, we can click on this floating window, and that will bring our viewer out. And then we can close our meters. And now we have a video feed without our meters. And we can place this wherever we want. We can even resize it if we need to. But it does get in the way. So if you're on one monitor, I suggest keeping it in the corner. We can reset it by clicking dock window and then opening our meters again. Or you can use a second monitor and put that on a second monitor, which is what I have set up in my studio. But for this demonstration, I'm going to keep it on one monitor so that you can follow along with me. So speaking of meters, up here we have bus 1. That is your final output for your project. Next to that, we have control room. You don't need to worry about control room unless you're working with a lot of different buses and have sort of a complicated setup. Essentially, this monitors different buses if you have them. You are most likely not going to have them. The next thing we have is loudness. Now, loudness can seem like a tricky thing, but essentially what you do is up here in the corner, you have all these different options. And loudness is a set level of sound that you want to hit for a particular platform. So in this case, YouTube, you can select YouTube and we see it's at a -14. When you play back your audio, you'll see it is registering on the meters.
It's business time.
And we'll see we have some different numbers popping up here. Integrated -28, short -27, that's like in the moment, and a range of about 3.5. Essentially what you want is your levels to be at -14. That's the easy way to put it. The next panel to talk about is the meters down here in the right-hand side. Now, right now I have them as full track mixer. Yours might come in as a small track mixer, but I like to look at full just so I can see everything. And sometimes it will come in with this sort of truncated look, and it'll have a bar down here where you can slide back and forth. You can also bring it out this way. If you add tracks to your project, it will add them here, but you'll get that scroll bar again. So just know that if you add tracks, they're probably hiding back there. Now on DaVinci Resolve Studio, I have some track effect options. So on each track, I can add my voice isolation, my dialogue leveling, my dialogue separation, and my ducker. The next option I have is the order of operations for effects, essentially. If I click this, I can select a different order for the track to process them. So for my dialogue, maybe I want my EQ to be the first thing that it processes. And then after that, my dynamics. And then once the dynamics is applied, then I add my effects. And perhaps I want a different order of operations on my sound effects, where I want the effects to happen first, then the dynamics, then EQ if I choose to do so. Now, the first way to add effects to a track is right here with the effects button, and that will give you a drop down where you can select, say, a limiter, or maybe I want some modulation like a flanger on my track, and that will add the flanger. When I click that, it opens up our window to adjust it. Now, just like every effect, we have a drop down for presets, and we have some knobs and dials that we can play with. We have a on and off button here and the reset button. We can close that. And if we need to open up that dialog box again, I can go over here and click on the controls button, and that will bring it back up. I can quickly disable the effect by hitting the red button or bypass. I can delete the plugin by clicking the arrow and choosing delete plugin. Now, you can't tell, but you can scroll down in this section here, and that will reveal more options down here. We have our dynamics panel, which we can double click and open. We have our EQ, same thing, double click to open. And our panning effects, we can adjust this way as well. And then our bus outputs, our VCA, and our groups, if we have groups enabled. We also have our transport controls, which are similar on the edit page. And over here, we have our automation controls. Automation is Fairlight's way of saying, hey, I want to animate the properties of something. So say I want to animate the fader for track 1 to dip down and then come back up over time. As you can see, automation is usually clicked on. That doesn't mean it's activated. To activate automation, we go to automation controls. You can choose if you want to write, trim, how you want your touch set up, on stop if you want it to return to the starting position or hold, and then which property you'd like to change. So let's say I want to change the fader for my sound effects mono. I go select fader level, and then I need to click on the track, that little automation. And you'll see that our fader has turned red. That means it's ready to record that property. So as I play back, I'll go to my fader here and make an adjustment. And you'll see in the timeline, it has made that adjustment. I'll stop playback, and you can see it has written those automation key points. I play it back, and you'll watch over here the fader automatically make those adjustments. Now there's a couple ways we can work with this automation data. We can go in if we want and try to highlight each individual point and change it that way, but that's really kind of annoying. Another way we can do it is to go to our range mode and select an area. Say we don't like that part right there. We go up to Fairlight, Automation, Erase. And that will erase the automation data for that section. Another option we have, say we just don't like anything we did, is we can right-click on the track and go to Clear Track Automation. That will give us this pop-up. We can reset or hold. I'm going to say reset. That will clear all of our automation data for the track. Another tool you can use with automation is the pencil tool. So I will come down to my music track here and go to the fader level and arm it. And I can go to the pencil and just draw in what kind of fade I want or how I want that to move. And that will automatically put that in there. And what's really cool is that if I don't like that specifically, I can come in and add some stuff to change it and get a new automation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. And then it's business time, right? Yeah.
Pretty cool. I'm going to turn off automation so I don't make any other adjustments to it. So now let's go up here to our menus. We have the media pool, which is self-explanatory. It functions just like we have in the edit page. We can go to a folder and we can click on a clip here, and that will bring up a preview window which we can play back and say, oh, I like that. Let's add that. I'm going to close that and open the effects panel. Now we have a couple options. The first one is transitions, which are basically just crossfades. The second one, audio effects. This is where all of our effects live. So let's say we want some distortion. So we can add distortion a couple different ways. We already did it over here with our effects option on the track. Another way is to take the distortion and drop it directly on the track header. That will open up that panel, and also you'll see it's added it to the track here. We can also add them on the clip level. So let's say this clip right here, I want to distort. I can highlight it and drop it directly onto that clip. I'll get the same menu, but it is just affecting that particular clip, not the entire track. You'll see it's not popped up here, but if I highlight this clip and then I go over to my inspector, you'll see we have the effect tab open and that distortion lives right there. I can then adjust it from here if I need to. I can delete it if I don't like it and then go back to working. The next tab we have is the index tab. What we can do in the index tab is take a look at all of our tracks that we've created. We can decide to view specific tracks. So let's say I want to just work on my dialogue. I can hide all of the other tracks like that and see just my dialogue track. Now what this does is it doesn't get rid of those other tracks, but it allows me to make adjustments to this one, say like cut up some dialogue, move some things around, without having to worry about affecting the tracks around it. They still live there, we can bring them back, but it's a nice way to focus in on a specific task. So the index tab is really nice. You can also look at markers from here if you have a bunch of markers. That's very helpful. The next tab we have is groups. Now groups are interesting. You probably won't use them a whole lot, but you can group a set of tracks together. Let's say we want both of our sound effects tracks to go into a group. So I can say create group, and we'll just say group one, sure. And just for the sake of this demonstration, I'll select fader because I want them to have the same control. So I'll say save. And now you'll see down here in the mixer, we have group one associated with both of these sound effects tracks. And I have up here group one highlighted. Now what I can do is with that group activated, selected and on, when I change one fader, it affects the fader of the other track in the group. And this would happen if, say, you had 5 tracks together. If I was adjusting one fader, it would affect the fader for all those tracks in that group. So groups are fun. Play around with that, see what you can do with those. The next tab to look at is the sound library. Now, when you first open up the sound library, you'll get this panel. It says download DaVinci Resolve's free sound library. Click download. I would highly recommend doing this. This is a free library of sounds that you can use for whatever, which is pretty great. The real power behind the sound library is that it is a searchable database that you can load into Resolve and use in any project. Right now, I don't have anything in my local database. However, I do have my company database, RTH, that I've used. And what you do is you go up to these 3 dots up here and say Add Library. What that will do is open up an Explorer window, navigate to your sound effects library, wherever you have that, and select Folder. That will take a minute, depending on how many sound effects you have, to catalog all of them. Once that is done, you can go to your search bar and say, oh, let's look for some whoosh sounds. And as you can see down here, it has loaded up every sound effect I have associated with the tag word whoosh. And with this, I can click on it and it brings up a preview of the sound here, which I can play back. And let's say I like that sound. Now there's 3 ways you can add this sound to the timeline. I can drag it from down here into the timeline like that. I can go up to the preview up here and drag it down into the timeline. And the third way I can do it is called Audition. Now let's say I want it to start around here. Now the Audition button goes into the selected track. So I don't want it in the mono track. That would be the first selected track. I want it in the stereo track. So I'm going to select Sound Effects Stereo because I can see here it's 2 channels, and I'm going to hit Audition. That's going to put it into my timeline, but it's not actually in the project yet. I can use this to test it out if I think that's where I want it. I can either cancel that or I can confirm. If I cancel, it just takes it away and I can audition it somewhere else. And when I find the spot I do want it, I can confirm and it is now in the project. If I audition a sound, place it into the timeline, if I click on any other sound, it takes it away because it wasn't actually in the project yet. I have to confirm it before it puts it into the project. Now, something to mention with the sound library, or any sounds for that matter, when you put them into your project. They will go into the folder you have selected in your media pool. So before you start adding in a bunch of sounds, I highly suggest that you either create a sound effects folder or highlight it if you already have it, and then go into your sound library and start adding sounds because it will add it into the folder that you have selected. You don't want your sound effects just all over willy-nilly. So the sound library is really great. The next panel we have is the ADR panel, which is automatic dialogue replacement. If you don't know what that is, you're probably not using it. That's okay. It's basically re-recording dialogue that your actors have said in your film that maybe the audio wasn't very clean. You can't bring it back. Something happened to where it's not usable. So you would bring them into the studio and have them re-say the lines. You can create a list of your cues here. You can set up how those cues are presented on screen. If you need a count in for your actors, what the file names will be, and so on. And then you can record them here. So that is essentially our Fairlight interface. There are a bunch of different options here that we didn't get into, but this should be enough to get you working in Fairlight. And I highly suggest poking around, seeing what different things do, adding some effects to the tracks, adding effects to clips. And remember, it's really hard to break things. You can always undo, you can always delete effects, you can always bring it back to original status. Hey, I really hope this video helps you get around the Fairlight page. I know there's a lot we didn't cover. Maybe we'll be able to get into some of those questions later. But for now, if you'd like to take a look at the project that I've been working on, there is a free download in the link in the description that you can get the media used in this project. Play around with it, have some fun, create some new sound effects, and hopefully this takes a little bit of the mystery out of the Fairlight page for you so that you can get creating some fantastic stuff. Maybe there's a cool video here that you could watch with your face.